This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. Sackheads Radio. And listen, there's no better people on the air to give you conservative news and talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on some papers for certain someone starts with K for Ken. I mean, it's not Ken. Turn up your radios and get ready for the action-packed show. Welcoming our hosts, Sean and Clint, two of the best radio show hosts in America. You're listening to the best conservative news and talk, Sackheads Radio. And a producer that does something sometimes, here and there. He might press a button.
He doesn't press a button. He presses a button in his cage to get like a treat. Like the rats do when they push the little lever.
Oh, man. So everyone knows, Sacco dumped that on us. We had no idea it was coming at all. Look at this. It's just pure music night. I like the energy. It's sad that Ken needs papers, and we got to work on that apparently now. It used to be Sacco.
Wait, Ken needs papers?
And now
How is he going to be able to get papers?
I don't know. I don't know, but apparently according to the new announcer man, Ken needs the papers now. He did nail it. They were the best talk show hosts in America. So that part it stands true.
Yeah,
to this day, that has never been proven wrong.
No, it has not been proven wrong.
So I'm proud about that.
That will vouch for that.
Absolutely. Your mom, my mom,
right.
Me, you.
Well, my mom probably wouldn't.
Who is that? Who's saying these things?
Welcome to the Sackheads Radio Show. It's the 24th
The worst part is Ken didn't hear
of June 2015. 2015 or something like that. But yeah, it's dude, you threw me for a curveball, brother. We have our usual music. We have our little motions that we go through.
Routine.
We do.
And now we're totally off our game. Sacco, you're gonna have to do the whole show.
Sacco, which happen out you're in. Talking about doilies and circuitry or something, or I don't know, whatever Sacco. Whatever those kids, Armenia. Well, we can talk about Armenia. No, what's going on in Armenia? I didn't even know that was still a country.
Oh, you know what? We'll talk about it.
No. There's riots online about Armenia. This is seriously.
Yeah.
I know this is your heritage and you have relatives over there, so
Sacco,
it should
get a
concern you.
microphone so you can share.
No.
They reiterate everything.
Long story short, they upped the electrical pricing, and then they did a peaceful protest, which
Turned non-peaceful.
No, it was peaceful. They just took water hoses to their faces.
Wait, who took water hoses?
So the government raised in Armenia. The government raised the prices of the government-run electricity.
Right.
People protested in the streets, and then the Armenian authorities turned around and opened a fire hose on them for it.
So here's what I heard you say. I heard you say that people wanted electricity, which is not a right; it's a privilege. And then when they protested it and broke the law enforcement took the necessary action to subdue the protests. Is that what you just said? Well, water's peaceful. It's not like they shocked everybody.
Well, do they have the right to protest?
Right?
Wait. Do they have the right to protest?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So
I don't know their law.
It could be an illegal activity. They're lucky they didn't get shot in Armenia.
Seriously?
And they did some girl broke her back.
Oh, with a fire hose? How do you know it was cops and not firemen that did that? Because firemen would do something like that.
Yeah, that's a fireman thing to do.
That's a fireman thing to do.
We find it illegal.
Yeah, I don't think the cops would spray somebody with like a water hose.
I don't know,
in
but
any country. I think that would be the fire department.
I'll tell you what, Sacco, I did not follow that in the news, and I'm glad you brought that up.
I wish you had a microphone so that we didn't have to translate.
I'm glad he doesn't have a
Because I don't
microphone.
speak Armenian. I'm pretty sure I got that story completely screwed up.
Oh, man. There it is, right in the chat room. If you're not in the chat room, go to shrmedia.com, and you can jump in the live chat.
I'm not in the chat room.
What's going on with you, my friend?
A's just won 8-2. I'm happy.
All right.
I'm not in the chat room.
All right, very good. Moving right along.
This has been a crazy day. I literally walked in the door about 10 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was
in.
15 minutes earlier, so, I mean, not much.
Not much.
Just enough time to shove some tacos into my mouth and call it a day.
I don't know who Taco is. But it's been busy. It's been busy.
Wow.
What? No, I'd like to meet him. I mean, he sounds nice. I don't know.
It's fine, Gonzo.
That's okay. Yeah.
Say hi to Camilla for me. So the chat room, and Ken started this on his show earlier tonight. There's a big move to promote Sacco from the cage, or as his name has become, Free Sacco.
Do they understand this is not a democracy?
Right. This isn't really.
And conservatives should understand this. Like, this is a private entity.
This is not a pure democracy.
Right. Yeah, we don't.
But there is a movement right now, which is a big movement. It's gaining steam very quickly. There's 5 people involved now.
Wow.
To promote Free Sacco, which is his name here in the studio.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
To Sackhead Sacco, making him an official on-air partner, if you will.
He can't be an official on-air partner.
Right, because we won't even give him a microphone yet.
Right.
Although
I did just call for him to have a microphone. But perhaps a boom mic that we can control from our side.
Well,
right?
yeah, an on-off button over here.
Right, boom over to him, and then bring it back, right?
So there's a big movement. If you want to join, it's at Sacco Taco 1 on Twitter, hashtag promote Sacco.
Oh, so that's the taco.
Yes.
No wonder. I was wondering.
Makes sense now, right?
Yes.
So if anything you want to put on social media, make sure you send it to that Twitter account specifically.
Right, because if you send it to mine, like nothing's going to happen.
Right, you won't even see it. If you send it to mine, I'll see it, but nothing's going to happen. Right. So that's important in-house.
Because we don't want to propagate the freedom movement.
Right.
For Sacco.
Right. No, there's just no need for it. He knows his
We might
place,
have to secede from SHR. And then people
we have our own flag.
I know, and then people want us to take it down because we
They
don't
want
want
to
to
take
free
the Sackheads
Saco. Right,
flag down
because
we
it's a
didn't
symbol
free
of oppression for Saco instead of, our right to secede
How
from
did this
the...
topic become so germane this week? This is
What?
amazing.
I know, and we didn't even plan this,
No.
which is perfect. Because we're actually going to get into that in a little bit.
Absolutely. Ken's calling for the official coronation at Freedom Fest 2015. Well, we might be there.
I just tweeted it.
Did you just tweet it out? That's so awesome. Mary, send it to my Facebook. Actually, Saco, you can get to Saco if you go to Sackhead Sean on Facebook. You can get to Saco from there. So you can find him there and send it right to his page. He needs all the love he can get, the poor little guy.
Poor furry little guy.
It's like a gerbil with 3 legs. You're like, you poor furry little guy.
You know what? Saco's like an Australian sheepdog, right? It's a furry guy, but he's like a 165-pound sheepdog. He thinks he's a lap dog.
Right.
He'll try and crawl into our laps to snuggle during the show. It's just he doesn't realize how intrusive that can be. Kind of like when you're on the couch and your big dog, right? It's like
But he's
that.
so cute. I mean, he really is.
No, he is. No,
so
he is.
cute over there in the cage. Just with his little, going up to his little...
Pushing his little button, right? Pushing his button, which
Yep,
referenced in the
just-
song now to get his little pellet, it's cute. His beer, because we like keeping him hooked on things.
Ken says his tail wags. It sure does. Have you ever seen Shallow Hal?
Hal.
Yes. He's like Jason Alexander at the end. So I know we have a lot of topics that we want to jump into.
Well, but why start now?
But if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about the Boston Marathon bomber because he was officially convicted today.
thought he
The
was
judge,
officially
the
convicted
judge upheld
before.
the sentence.
Well, okay.
And actually put it in final because there was a whole bunch of things that they could have done, but they didn't. So it's been finalized. But he spoke for the first time through the entirety of this. And a lot of mixed reactions. There were some victims who didn't want to hear him speak and other victims who did. And there were some victims who were indifferent. But he went on to say, if there is any lingering doubt, and this is Yokar Sanayev, let there be no more. I did it, along with my brother, Sanayev said. And of course, he's referring, he said, I ask Allah to have mercy on me, my brother, and my family. Now, I am sorry for the lives I have taken, for the suffering that I have caused you, for the damage I have done, irreparable damage. Allah said in the Quran that no soul is burdened with more than it can bear, and you just told us how unbearable it was, how horrendous it was, this thing I put you through. I also wish that far more people had a chance to get up there and speak, but I took them from you. He also went on to pray for Allah to bestow His mercy upon the deceased, those affected in the bombings and their families. I pray for your relief, your healing, your well-being, and your strength. Now, he never looked... First of all, he never denounced the cause that he was going for. He never denounced...
Terrorism
or jihad.
Right.
He never really outright apologized. He said, I'm sorry for your family, but I'm sorry I did it, which is kind of different. Which is really, really weird. The judge of the trial, George O'Toole, told Tsarnaev that he had embraced a cruel God, heeded the jihadist siren song, and engaged in a monstrous self-deception to carry out the bombings. This is a federal judge. That's some pretty strong wording, actually. Mm-hmm. Considering, the day and age that we're in, and a lot of judges wouldn't say something. I give Judge O'Toole a lot of credit. And I'll say it again. He told him he embraced a cruel God, heeded the jihadist siren song, and engaged in monstrous self-deception to carry out the bombings. The judge went on to say, whenever your name is mentioned, what will be remembered is the evil you have done. No one will remember that your teachers were fond of you. No one will mention that your friends found you funny and fun to be with. No one will say you were a talented athlete or that you displayed compassion in being a best buddy or that you showed more respect to women friends than your peers did. What will be remembered is that you murdered and maimed innocent people and that you did it willfully and intentionally. You did this on purpose. Surely someone who believes that God smiles on and rewards the deliberate killings and maiming of innocent peoples believe in a cruel God. This is not, it cannot be the God of Islam. Anyone who has been led to believe otherwise has been malicious and willfully deceived. That was a pretty strong wording from a federal court judge.
Absolutely, particularly to touch on the religious
right into it too, and he didn't tiptoe around it.
No, not at all.
He did go down the road saying that the side of Islam he followed is a perverted aspect of Islam. You can have that debate on another time, but the reality is what it is. A federal court judge. I almost bet that at some point you're going to see him removed from the bench before November 2016. I don't know why. Call me crazy, but I have a feeling like something's going to pop up in his background where they're like, all of a sudden we're going to remove this judge for actually saying something that needed to be said, in my opinion.
They were appointed for life.
I know.
Right?
They'll find a dead hooker in his trunk. Something. They'll find some way to...
I don't know how she got there.
Really? It has your fingerprints all over it.
Isn't this your brand cigar?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. And all of a sudden, Joe out of nowhere, hey, Brock, did you put the... Hey, guys! But no, I was actually pretty psyched to see it. I was pretty psyched to see that some words that needed to be said were actually said. And there was different victim response, like I said. Some people who wanted to see him speak afterwards said, well, I wish he never had. And then there were other people who were like, hey, you know what? I appreciate his words, however hollow they may be. At least he said something which nobody really expected him to. I think that this is more, it was very rehearsed. If you listen to the cadence of it, he had been practicing. His attorney said to him, nope, you got beaten up during the trial for not saying anything and showing no remorse. You have to say something.
And act like you care.
And act like you care. I don't think he really believed any of the words that he said. And I have no reason to believe why he would, other than his attorney said you have an appeal at some point and you have to paint this as pretty as possible for your appeal to save your life. So just an update on that. You know, his appeal's going to stretch this out for another 30 years, and he'll probably die in prison versus be executed. But, you know, it closed the door, and it closed the door for the tragedy of the city of Boston and a lot of the people who were there and went through it, and the victims' families, as well as the MIT Police Department with Officer Sean Collier. So it was just, you know, for me, and obviously anyone who listens to the show knows that's my hometown. It's where I was born from. And I followed the story closely, and it was real personal to me. So I'm kind of glad that it's shut and it's time to actually move forward in the city. That was it. I'm done for the night. Go. No, it's all you, Clint.
No, you nailed it. Next week on the Sackhead Radio Show.
Listen at 8 to 8:15 Pacific Standard Time.
So I read an article, a report that the UN came out, and it was the. This is so disgusting. I hate the UN. It is so time for us to get the hell out of there and kick.
Can't we just evict them?
Yes.
Like, if the city of New York, I'm sure it's federal property. I don't know exactly what this is.
Good. Take it back.
But if somebody turns around, and can't we get a vote to kick them out?
Or just kick them out.
We're not kick them out of a public, but you know this country, everything has to be a vote by vote. What I'm saying is that we're not kicking a family onto the street. We're kicking another nation's government or a world government body out of our sovereign land. What the hell is wrong with that idea?
Well, here's what the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva came out with today. Basically, Benjamin Netanyahu and any other suspected Israeli war criminals should be arrested.
Oh, very nice.
And tried either in the International Criminal Court or in any other court that the UN Human Rights Council deems fair.
Did Bibi come out with two middle fingers and say, I don't recognize your court?
No.
Oh.
No.
Should have.
Yeah. So the board, quote, calls upon the international community to support actively the work of the International Criminal Court in relation to the occupied Palestine territory, and exercise universal jurisdiction to try international crimes in national courts and to comply with extradition requests pertaining to suspects of such crimes to countries where they would face a fair trial.
Yeah, very fair.
Huh?
So The Hague?
Right.
They'd be going to The Hague?
Right.
And, you know, it's funny to me to think that any nation that defends himself from attack...
And that's the problem right there, right? Because Palestine fired 750 plus rockets.
Still firing them as of last week.
Right, but we're talking just in 2014
Right,
alone.
during the event.
They had tunnels to come into Israel. Israel defended itself, and they're charging Israelis and elected Israeli officials with war crimes.
War crimes.
Wanting them arrested wherever you get your hands on them, basically, and tried in an international court, or removed to some other country where they think they could get a, quote, fair trial for in their view.
I would love...
When did we, as a, I don't even want to say as a society, but when did it become okay to try a nation or elected officials within the nation that are charged with protecting those people with war crimes for self-defense? It's in the UN Charter that nations have a right to self-defense. In the UN Charter, it says, quote, "Nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of self-defense if armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations." The United Nations wasn't intended to prohibit countries from defending themselves.
You didn't read down to the A-1, which is all the way down the bottom of the page. Except Israel, right.
Yeah,
Israel's not allowed to do that.
Hang on, let me scroll down. Yeah, no, it's not in there.
No, it is. It's all the way down the bottom.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No, it's written in that. It's written in that special ink.
There, though.
It's written in that special ink that you have to do the other marker over.
It's handwritten, and I don't think it's legit.
I don't think so. I think it's pretty legit. Hey, listen, and the best part is they fought the Palestinians back to a land that's inside Israel. They didn't even go into another country. It is their country.
Right.
That's the best part about all of this. It's not like they invaded Syria.
Who would do that, though? If a country did that, the UN would hold them accountable and charge whoever was responsible. They didn't go
marching into Jordan to blow up the Palestinians. They literally went in and attacked a Palestinian embankment that was lobbing missiles at innocent people day after day after day, pushed them back, achieved their mission. Oh, there was some collateral damage. Yeah, that's called friggin' war.
Right.
And when the Palestinians and Hamas are hiding their missiles in schools and hospitals and all that other stuff, they are the ones who are putting their people in peril.
Yes.
Not the Israelis. So let's get off the friggin' high horse about this.
Why are you yelling at me
because
right
I am
now?
so sick and tired of the UN.
I'm not even yelling at you right now when you're
stupid
yelling
ass
at
blue
me.
helmets just running around acting like they know what the F they're doing.
All willy-nilly.
All willy-nilly like a-holes. Well, you know, it's one of those things that you... all the more reason we have to get rid of the UN. Listen, Israel is...
What if the UN stationed troops here in the United States?
Oh, I would just... It would be time.
It'd be time to what? Like submit?
No.
To the authority, right? That's what you're talking about. It would be time to submit to the authority.
No, I would actually...
You can't say anything else on the radio right now.
No, against the UN, that would be... I would consider that a foreign invasion on American soil. I would defend my country.
What if the country said they were okay to be here?
Well, then that would no longer exist as our nation, wouldn't it?
Well,
you could argue that we've turned the sovereignty... The leadership of the country would have turned our sovereignty over to the United Nations. So are you going on
record saying right now that if we had UN troops here with U.S. authority, that you would resist physically?
Yep.
Okay.
Certainly not the UN. I'll have the conversation with my own government.
Right.
Not with the UN. I don't recognize them as anything. They are nothing but a money-making whore organization.
I wouldn't even consider them a whore organization.
No, because they F people all the time after getting paid for it. Like, look at what they're doing to Israel right now.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
And Israel pays them money to be part of the UN.
But the UN's not even... The UN gets a lot of money, so they should be a high-class hooker. But they're not.
They're like a crack whore.
Right, but who gets paid a lot of money.
They're $1 million crack whore.
Right, they're $1 million crack whore that people look and say, oh my God, she's beautiful.
With her one
government right
with
there.
With her one tooth that sticks out forward. You just see the bottom of it.
Right.
But it's true. The United Nations is going off the rails. And look at, they did a thing on America, what was it, 2 years ago on the treatment of Native Americans.
Yes.
They've gone after Israel before. They won't go after friggin' Iran. Where are they on Syria? Where are they with Russia right now in the Ukraine and the war atrocities that are going on over there? If
Under
they're going
to with their heads in their laps. Oh, you
that's
asked
the crack
question.
whore.
I was just answering it. Yeah, the UN.
If they're gonna,
we've gone through this, Sean.
I don't know why I keep getting lost.
I don't know either. Look,
but listen, if they're gonna nut up,
hang on. If blue helmets were in our country, yeah, I believe it would absolutely be the time to resist. You would have to. in that case.
Well, they were UN observers. Yeah, Sacco, they were UN observers during our elections. There absolutely were.
I'm talking Blue Helmets, actual
Blue Helmets, so the military, the military arm, if you will, the terrorism arm of the UN.
I want to know how our government. I want to see somebody in Congress. I want to see a 2016 Republican nominee, and I have not been able to find a reaction to this yet. But I want to see a 2016 Republican nominee respond to this.
Mm-hmm. I would love to.
I want to know
somebody who's running for
not
office.
Nominee, but candidate.
By the way, we added two more.
Candidate.
Krispy Kreme announced.
Krispy Kreme did announce?
I think Krispy Kreme announced today, or said today he was going to announce last week. Bobby Jindal's in as of today.
Okay. I saw Bobby Jindal. I didn't know Krispy Kreme was in. So I read this story, and I was sick. The U.S. should not only resign from the Human Rights Council.
Yes.
We should completely pull out of and stop funding the UN.
Right. We need to pull out of that whore.
Yes. We need to pull out of the whore and just
I couldn't agree more. And just be done. Just be done.
Pull out of the whore.
Don't pay any more.
Nope.
And just leave.
Yes.
I agree with you 100%. According to the UN, Canada has an atrocious human rights record. This from Kel in the chat room. Canada. Did they say A at people too many times?
Yes.
Like, I've been to Canada a bunch of times. Even the French Canadians weren't rude to me. They weren't nice, but they weren't rude.
They're talking about Canada.
Oh, the one just north of America?
Right.
Never been.
No, that's my point.
Right.
A horrendous human rights violation. You remember Auschwitz?
Yeah.
It's like that. Like the whole country.
Except it was like, welcome to Tim Hortons. Sorry, we're out of maple glaze. That was the human rights atrocity right there.
Yes.
The UN, listen.
I knew that story was going to get you fired up. I saw that story and I started giggling to myself. Because
you knew
about your reaction.
Well, more and more people are figuring that out. Because on my day show, I have people throw stories at me that they know are going to get me mad too, and it's starting.
You're beat red right now.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Just so you know.
I mean, listen, we can talk about the UN time and again, but
why don't we just, instead of time and again, why not just for another 4 minutes or so?
Okay, I'll give you that. So but the UN is a body that's self-perpetuating, right? Because
like yours. I apologize. That was uncalled for.
I wish.
I'm sorry.
I could save so much friggin' money in food and beer. If we can get to that,
that's why it self-perpetuates.
Well, not really. But if there was nobody doing anything wrong in this world, and we know they won't go after the real bad players in this world because they scare them. Essentially, Russia, Iran, all those.
The United States, Israel.
Right. We don't scare them. Because they know we will play by the rules. Even if we don't agree with it, they won't turn Netanyahu over to be arrested. But they won't turn around and say, F you, UN, I'm out, as they should.
And pull our funding.
Right. They know they won't do that, so they're bullies, and they pick on the kids they know will not fight back against them. Our country, Israel, the UK, all the countries that they will go after.
So I have a plan.
Yes, I'm in.
We pull out of the UN, we stop funding, and then we surround the UN building with troops. You with me so far?
I'm there before you were.
And they leave or not. And if they don't leave, will we open a gate, Sacco? Think outside of the box here. Gosh.
Obviously we'd let them through if we're trying to get rid of them.
Right.
I'd pay for the friggin' U-Haul, Sacco.
Right.
You can only go up.
You have to leave, but you can't go through us and step foot on the rest of our country. And if you don't leave, then we're going to blow you up.
Why don't we find them in violation for some sort of federal code, all of them, and be like, you come out of the building, we're hooking you.
Or just go in and get them.
No, look at him. Dude, he just went from brown to red. That's impressive.
Right.
Look at that.
And the red is so deep that it's almost brown again.
Yes. How do you do that?
I don't know.
Good job.
It's pretty amazing, I got to say.
Leave it to you to aggravate the Marine with a question like that.
What?
Would you ever put on a blue, and I could just see the blood pressure actually start in his arms and go up his neck.
I could have said tutu. Like, he didn't. One or two Marines, some of them are into some stuff. I don't know.
I'm not judging them. I'm not judging.
Right.
Just saying.
Look, I celebrate. That's fine, right? Wait, watch how red he gets here. Isn't the United States Marine Corps Department of the Navy, right? See look how red he. I apologize for that. I'm just going to apologize to all our Marine Corps listeners right now.
Dude, we have Marines that actually liked us until then. I know. We have a following at the base in Japan.
I know, but here's the thing. We always give the United States Marine Corps props, right?
Oh, love the Marine
Corps.
We
have Navy guys that hate us. We got to get a little bit of the Navy crowd in.
Good question from the chat room. What would you wear first, the blue helmet or the tutu?
Probably the tutu.
Probably the tutu.
Good man. I have an extra one. Yeah, I'm just saying.
That's why he doesn't judge. He wears them all the time.
Yeah, I might be wearing one in Vegas.
Might is the optional word.
That's the word there. Oh, Socko's closing the door on us. When we come back, we're going to talk about this whole rebel flag debate and how it's even getting deeper now to where there's actually a call to remove all signs and references to the Confederate States of America from statues of Robert E. Lee and everything else.
Just keep erasing our history.
Yeah, listen, don't get into the segment now. Don't showbiz it.
Sorry, all right.
All this and more.
Here on the Sackheads Radio Show, back in 3 on the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Socko as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border we got to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So the South will never rise again, according to everybody.
How do you know? So there's a huge movement to remove the Confederate flag from everywhere, I think, in the world. I'm pretty sure. As a matter of fact, I remember seeing this. Have you seen the new Dukes of Hazzard commercial where Bo and Luke Duke
yes, Geico.
have the General Lee? There is no Confederate flag.
There is no Confederate flag on that. I've noticed that.
Car, which, I don't know. And if you're going to reference a show, why are we going to change? Anyways, it's neither here nor there. Huge push right now to remove the Confederate battle flag. And really, it's the flag they want to remove, the Stars and Bars of the Confederacy, was the battle flag of General Robert E. Lee. It wasn't even the original flag of the Confederate States of America.
No, it wasn't.
Which looked very similar to the original flag
of the United States
of America, which they didn't like because it looked too much like the flag of the United States of America. So the symbol they actually want to remove is the Confederate battle flag.
Yes.
Which was a symbol of the Confederate Army and Robert E. Lee, who was such a brilliant American soldier and West Point graduate that Abraham Lincoln offered him a commission as the commander-in-chief of the American forces.
Mm-hmm.
And when Virginia seceded, General Lee said, hey, I cannot fight against my own people. Basically, he had to fight for his people, for his state. Even the original Confederate flag was a symbol of the rights of the southern states to secede. Whether you agree with those rights or not, and I obviously disagree with the concept of slavery,
mm-hmm.
and I absolutely believe that the federal government had the authority, not the right, because governments don't have rights. I believe the federal government had the authority to try that the states had the authority to secede from the Union, based again along in the principles out for their needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the interesting paradox of the Civil War era for me. So this flag, to me, represents, and to a lot of people, represents the country that was formed when the states exercised essentially their God-given right. The people exercised their God-given right to secede from a government that they found to be too oppressive. Whether you agree it was too oppressive or not because they were trying to outlaw slavery,
they at the time
is a
believed
non-issue.
it was.
At the time, those people band together.
What do you mean those people?
Those people, the Southern people,
okay,
band together to cast off a government that they felt had become too oppressive. So that flag symbolizes that. Not they didn't raise the flag and say slavery for all. This is the flag of slavery.
Right.
Right. The flag of the Confederacy.
It wasn't tattooed onto slaves. It wasn't a brand.
Right. The flag was raised as a symbol of their independence and secession from the United States. Their flag of a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm.
The reasons they did that are different. Just like our flag, there's a group of professors that are trying to have the United States flag removed because they view it as a symbol of oppression to the rest of the world and everything else. Also, where do we draw the line?
Well, that's the thing. At what point is there a line saying that everything is offensive So now you can't have anything
You can't have any
that
flag.
sticks out anything.
Our country should not have any flag.
Flag,
it's invisible.
Clothing, symbols, anything. Which is funny because anytime we talk about this, I always go back to the communist objectives in 1967. I think that was entered into the congressional document. And one of the things that they talked about was artwork, making it bland, and I forget the exact wording, but essentially making it nothing. And to me, one of the greatest pieces of artwork in the country is our flag. And once you start going down that path of you can't have this because it offends, you can't have this because it offends. Listen, we have kids in the school in California who were not allowed to wear their American flag shirts on Cinco de Mayo because it offended the Mexican students. And it was upheld by the Supreme Court.
I will wear my American flag shirt. My kids will wear their American flag shirt.
Wherever the hell they want.
Wherever the hell they want.
Right.
Whenever the hell they want.
When does this start?
Unless there's a school uniform.
Right. And then, but you're willingly allowing them to go to that school, so they're right. There's a big difference. It's not being forced.
Exactly.
I have a problem with public schools forcing uniforms, believe it or not. As much as I believe in a dress code, I don't think that it should be, because individuality and independent thinking is part of liberty.
Right.
And when you start squashing that by as simple as saying, well, this flag is offensive. Well, the flag literally stands for liberty in this country. I mean, that is the symbol for freedom and liberty. It's known throughout the world as the beacon.
I get it, but I'm telling you, there are some professors that want to take the flag.
Oh, well, they're
down and
douchebags.
display it on. Of course they are.
Okay.
And so we're talking about a symbol of a nation. And granted, look, the Confederacy lost. Okay, we get that, but now there's a push to try and do away with all parts of the Confederacy and basically erase that part of history. Look, like it or not, the Confederate States of America is part of our culture. They did secede. They did become a separate country. We fought a war. They are back in the Union. And guess what? We accept that history because
as part of our own.
When they became states again, that's part of their history. That is part of our national history. Like it or not, good or bad, that is part of our national history. It's kind of like if you're divorced and you start dating somebody else and they've had relationships in the past that you disagree with. If you take them and you marry them anyways, you've accepted that baggage. You've accepted that history. We married the southern states again, folks. We knew what we were getting.
We had a reception. Punch was served.
Right. We cut cake. There was a whole thing. So...
But it's true.
But it's true. I mean, we often say absurd things on this show to point out how absurd some of this is. You may not like the Confederate history, but it is a part of our national heritage. There's a push to remove a monument of Robert E. Lee.
Yes.
Look, Robert E. Lee was a very respected American. We already talked about this. Very respected American general. There was a United States ballistic nuclear submarine named after him, and I'm pretty sure that was post-Civil War.
Well, I'll have to check my facts.
We'll have to check the facts.
I want to verify.
It was a George Washington class.
Right. So George Washington, it was a long time ago.
He was a racist too, so it was a long time ago. The United States military has named vessels after this man because he was a great name. I'm pretty sure there's a university named after him and George Washington. Washington and Lee University. So should we just do away with that university too?
Well, and so,
because Washington had slaves and Robert E. Lee fought for the Confederates, so maybe that whole university
Dave brought up a
away.
good question in the chat room. Has anyone asked why this particular bit of our history is starting to be erased? Why are they trying to do away with it completely? And they are, in my opinion.
Of course they are.
And that is an amazing question. Dave points out, you said, could it be that they don't want independence in the modern day getting ideas? It's really, I'm suspect of any time we want to remove a part of our history.
Good or bad.
Right. You don't have to agree with our history.
For example, I would never advocate removing President Barack Obama from the history books.
Right. Because you have to take the bad with the good somehow.
Exactly.
But as a matter of fact, I think he's somebody we have
flag that they said, this flag symbolizes our love of slavery. And so we're raising this flag in honor of slavery, and everywhere this flag is raised, we're going to hold slaves, and that's what it represents. That's not the case.
Right.
It was raised as a symbol of a nation. And we're talking about the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. We're talking about the battle flag of Robert E. Lee. We're talking. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Here's my biggest concern.
I think people like being offended.
Well, here's my concern too, and I lost a lot of respect with Nikki Haley. My opinion, and I've said this before, we are supposed to be the party of thinking and rationale.
Yeah.
The Democrats, the progressives, they are the party of emotions. They get all the emotions wound up, like they did in this case specifically. They are using this horrific attack by this scumbag on a bunch of church-going innocent people to destroy the Second Amendment and the Confederate flag. And like a painted on the side of a college somewhere.
Right. I wouldn't want a symbol of, somebody that talks about violence against any race, like Adolf Hitler or something like that.
Right. Or I wouldn't want T-shirts with Che Guevara on it, or Mao, or something like that.
Or something like that.
I wouldn't like that.
That would be ridiculous. We would never have that. But so some of these calls, basically to have all of the Confederate...
I would like to see the election buttons of Clinton and Obama that actually had the Confederate flag on them removed as well. Both Clinton and President Obama had election buttons going around the South that had their image, a quote, and the Confederate flag. I would like those removed. Mostly Obama's picture and Clinton's picture, because they offend me.
Right.
The rest of it can stay. Well, the wording on them can probably go too.
There's already private companies, and look, as a private company corporation, they can do this, but there are some companies, retail companies, that are trying to remove merchandise and not sell merchandise with the Confederate battle flag on it. Amazon is one, Sears is another, Walmart. And look, if you don't want to sell something, hey, that's your right as a company. You don't have to sell something you don't want to sell. But if somebody else wants to wear that or fly, what happens if somebody wants to fly the Confederate battle flag from their front porch?
Well, I was going to say, where does it end?
Exactly. Are they going to say, well, that's offensive, so you can't have that?
If I'm wearing my Smokey and the Bandit shirt and it has the Confederate flag on it, am I all of a sudden not going to be allowed in certain places?
Are you going to be a racist because of that?
Well, that ship has already. Well, I think his name's Storm Door or Storm Roof or something like that. Probably an indicator that something was wrong when you get named Storm Door. But
yeah,
immediately. Oh, the Confederate flag. And here's the funniest part, and Dan pointed this out to me, one of his early pictures, and you look at the flags he was wearing, it was all apartheid countries' flags.
Mm-hmm.
And
South Africa.
I was like, oh, well, okay. And I said right then and there, and I think we said last week, yeah, I think this guy was a racist.
Right.
I had no question about that. But just because he's standing...
So here's the question. Look, if there was, let's say, sake of argument, let's go to Sackhead Land. Let's say
we have our own flag.
We have our own flag. Let's say there was a state that adopted, as part of one of their National Guard units, if they adopted the swastika prior to the Germans, prior to the Third Reich? Should that flag be removed?
Well, and here's the thing about the swastika. A lot of people don't know this. The swastika had been around for hundreds.
What's a swastika?
Knows the swastika has been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years before the Germans.
Billions of years. The dinosaurs had swastikas.
Literally,
that might have been what caused their extinction.
Literally, they did.
Right.
But it had been around for thousands of years in different forms. It was very big in Egyptian culture.
Yep.
It was related oftentimes to a form of Christianity. I don't remember the exact terminology from it. The Nazis just That was the only reason for the swastika.
Right.
Association with the Nazis. But it could have very well had been a friggin' unicorn.
Right.
You know, so now, that being said, do I want to see the swastika flown anywhere? No. Because of what it was perverted into. And
so that would be the same argument for the Confederate flag.
I could see that.
Because of what it has been perverted into.
I could see what it was perverted into.
The swastika is not part of our national heritage.
Right.
Right?
So it wasn't part of our country, except for it stood for an oppressive body that we fought. It was yet another oppressive body that we fought as a nation to save millions of people's lives. But we're the a-holes. Sorry. Just throwing it out there. You know, it's like the Civil War. How many people died in the Civil War to free slaves? How come we don't talk about that?
But again, here's kind of that dual purpose, right? So on one hand, yes, you had the North that was absolutely righteous and exercising its authority to free slaves based upon the principles in our founding documents.
I don't even like saying just the North. I'd like to say the government.
Okay, the government of the North. And then you had the government of the South that did
the Manson-Nixon line?
The Manson-Nixon line. That also had the authority and the right as a people to secede from a government that they felt
was oppressive and rogue.
Absolutely. So both sides were right to a point. The North was right from as long as those southern states were states and part of the Union, the federal government did in fact have the authority to free those slaves. However, once those states seceded and threw off that government that was oppressive for them and formed their own union and a new form of government, I would argue that the United States at that time, they no longer had the authority to attempt to interject into a now sovereign nation's affairs and how they conduct.
No,
So once that happened, once the Confederate States seceded, formed their own government, and said we are now an independent sovereign nation, elected officials have done this, this is now our sovereign land, the United States no longer,
once somebody recognizes them as a country.
Why does anybody have to recognize them as a country?
That's just kind of that's kind of the norm that we go by, right, wrong, or indifferent. I agree.
So if somebody recognized Palestine as a country,
no, God, no, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying what currently gets used as one of the reasons for that.
So let's say California. Let's say California said, you know what, we are done with the federal government for whatever reason. We secede. We are now our own independent republic like we started. Sake of argument.
I know, it's just cute to think.
Does Californians have the right to do that?
If they follow the constitutional steps to do so, yes.
There are no constitutional steps to secede from the Union.
There aren't?
No.
Isn't there legal precedence for it somewhere?
Yeah, the Confederate States of America.
All right. What did they do?
They seceded from the Union. So, there's nothing, because people will say, well, it's been settled. You can't do that. Well,
right,
no,
they would have to have a vote within the state
right, and
to do so.
So let's say they did that, and
right.
they succeeded.
And they succeeded in the vote.
Why do we need to have any other country recognize us?
Right. No,
we don't. Nowhere in the Declaration or anybody else has it said, well, and you have to establish your own government, and somebody else has to say you're legitimate.
No, I agree. I was pointing out kind of a ridiculous trend that gets thrown out. I agree, and this is always such a weird walk down history because
there really are two legitimate
sides.
Well,
it's the immovable object and the unstoppable force, if you will, right? Because both are right, both are fluid, both are in motion, and both are following the rules.
One is morally right.
Well, right. I'm talking
right
by the terms, by the black and white of the paper.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, see, they both were right in a way. Did somebody have the moral high ground?
One was left.
Yes. Right, the South was left.
At the time.
They had the moral high ground, the North did. And it was the right reason, too. That was the best part. And part of the reason that the South wanted to succeed is at the end of the 19th century, slavery, there was a sundowner clause, essentially. It would have went away naturally. That was the other reason why the South was wanting to succeed when they did, because even if that war was never fought, slavery would have gone away legally.
Here's the other issue too: the North was having major tariffs imposed upon the South.
Mm-hmm.
The South was being hurt financially, and slavery was not the only issue. It certainly was a catalyst issue, and they certainly did want to keep slaves and view them as property. Nobody's arguing that wasn't the case, but there were other reasons the war was fought also. But we can't erase our history or portions of our history because it's inconvenient and it doesn't make people feel good.
Look at what's being taught with 9/11.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this now? Right? Because it's hateful.
Right.
It's a thing of war.
Right.
We just need to.
Thank you, Sacco. But you look at 9/11 too. It's not being taught today in schools. It is not being taught that they're Islamist extremists. They're almost trying to picture them like gang members.
Yeah. So.
When we come back, we do have more stuff to talk about right here on the Sackheads Radio Show live in the SHR Media Network. And we may actually, there may be a call, too. Somebody said they may call in. We may take a call tonight. All that and more. Stick around. Back in a few.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid pro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, from me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border to coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution
Network. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And now with our next story is Clint.
So have you seen that Secretary Carter came out this week and he said...
the closet? Sacco? It's funny when he pays attention.
It is, but he doesn't pay attention. All he heard is comes out, and the first thing he thinks
Of
of
the
is
closet?
of the closet, which I find interesting.
That's why you won't be promoted, Sacco.
So Defense Secretary Ash Carter,
ASH. Come on,
ASH,
Sacco.
get your head out of the gutter.
Let's keep it above the table here.
Says that the United States is going to contribute aircraft, military forces, and weapons to NATO's Rapid Reaction Force. This is to help defend Europe against security threats, including Russia.
Well, I love how they throw out security threats and then Russia.
Right.
I think Russia's kind of...
and violent extremists. Which, in order to activate... Would we have to declare war against the extremists in order to have...
Already have.
NATO... Was there a former declaration of war against them?
Oh, no, I guess not.
Oh, okay, so we didn't.
Could do one.
Right. So the U.S. is going to be contributing intel sources, surveillance, spec ops forces, transport aircraft, various weapons, bombers, fighters, naval vessels. European defense. And I remember in the 80s, there was a a lot of attention was paid, obviously, because of the Soviet Union. A lot of attention was paid to the defense of Europe. And I think with the breakup of the Soviet Union, I think a lot of those plans, I'm sure they're still around, but they've obviously shifted.
Dust them off.
Yeah, dust them off. Okay, so what was the one from 1982? Let's do that one. Minus the ground troops, minus the large ground. We'll give them some troops, but not the large ground troops. I thought this is interesting. We often talk about Russia and a lot of the things that they do to kind of provoke confrontations with their Tu-95 bomber aircraft that fly close to California and Alaska, and their subs in the Gulf, or submarine that was found in the Gulf, and nuclear subs now patrolling the world, which they haven't done since the Cold War. So in addition to what the Russians have done over in Ukraine and whatnot, or in I'm just watching Sean right now. We need a camera in studio for what you just did.
Why?
Just so you know. Because.
But then I'd have to click the 18+ button.
Right. And it was like a train wreck.
And it's like $3.99 a minute.
Right? I couldn't help but stare. $3.99 a minute? let's get on that.
What?
So there was a meeting with various defense ministers from Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, and look, they also agreed to provide troops to this task force, which was announced last year at the NATO summit in Wales, and NATO has been waiting to hear from. And there's no final decisions on specifically how many troops are going to be part of this force, but I think
Right.
It
tells you how bad things might actually be.
Right. If this president
versus
is willing,
what they sell to us.
If Mr. Let's pull the hell out of everything because I don't like to wear a condom wants to actually put troops and put resources
President
somewhere.
Rhythm Method.
Right. if President Rhythm Method, I like that. If he actually wants to put resources and military resources in a particular area, that troubles me.
Right.
Because this president does not like to do that at all.
Well, and you look at, too, just recently, Vladimir Putin pretty much came through his envoy, Sergei Markov, essentially said that if Finland wants to start World War III, they would join NATO. That's some pretty big wording, because Finland's been talking about it with all the rhetoric and everything that's been going on, and everything
because
that's going on.
Finland knows that while they have some badass forces, they can't do that on their own.
Right. That's a big force to jump up against. And they know that NATO is the safest place to be. And listen, if you're a NATO nation, for those who don't know, if you get invaded by a foreign country and you invoke Article 7, I believe, of the NATO So it's a big deal, which is why the Ukraine was picked, and we talked about this before. You look at this former
Why would I?
Well, not you, but if you wanted to. If you wanted to.
We don't even have an aircraft carrier.
We could call
it
nose
Sean.
Invasions.
We don't even have an aircraft carrier yet.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
We are
I
working
prefer
on
Tubby.
It. I know you do. But it sounds too much like Tuggy, which is a whole different thing.
That's
don't
one of those,
Google search that.
Do not, whatever you do.
Yeah, don't.
But to get back to your point, this president, you remember the red line in Syria, and it's just Syria. I mean, at the end of the day, if we threw a couple tomahawks into Syria, the most.
Hang on a second. If Canada invaded Syria and freed it, would it be Maple Syria?
Only if it kept it as a colony.
Okay.
And Kel, you must know the Prime Minister of Canada. There's only like 20 of you guys up there.
Eh?
Can you see if that could happen? Just because
Do you people in Canada not hear?
But I love that.
I'm sorry.
Here's the best part: is if you've never been to Canada, it is an amazing country. They're just little American hats. That's all.
Here's why I have a problem with Canada. Because we tried to take it and we failed, which pisses me off. I don't like their little country between Alaska and the rest of us.
But you know, to get back to the point at some, well, we figured you should do that occasionally. It is kind of scary to see that we're moving so much in when he didn't do anything with Syria. He wouldn't throw the tomahawks, even though they were gassing their own people.
Right.
Even when we find out they're still using chlorine gas, even though it's not on the weapons list because it has industrial applications.
Right, because you can clean swimming pools with it, right?
Right, and make Clorox bleach or whatever.
Whatever.
And we still do nothing about it, and it's just Syria.
Look, Ash Carter said, we're doing this because the United States is deeply committed to the defense of Europe, as we have been for decades.
Really? Didn't he just pull the defense missile systems out of Poland a couple of years ago? We're not going to do that. You don't need it. You don't need it.
You don't need. Oh, wait, what? Oh, let's put a bunch of stuff back in there.
Yeah, including now defense systems for missiles they've talked about too recently. All of a sudden that started to talk again. So really when you see some people say, oh, it's
I
only...
want to say something real quick. I apologize for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
We called it on this show
2 years ago?
Cold War II. We asked Congressman Sessions about it.
Yes.
Right? Is there another Cold War coming? Is there a Cold War II coming? And
yeah,
it sure looks to be.
It's
the Cold War seems to be heating up,
and it looks like.
See what I did there?
I see, or cooling down,
or cooling.
I don't.
It's icy.
Which
hot.
way do we go?
It's icy.
It's icy hot. I'll go with icy hot. You have to look at.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. You have to look at what Russia's been doing.
I have been.
The amount of money.
No,
I'm talking to the listeners.
Oh,
Jackhole.
No, Ash.
Ash,
what?
Sorry, Ash. We've been saying it for years that their plan was to get the old band back together again. We've been saying that on here for a long, long time. You look at the announcements and what they've done internally. Listen, Putin, and I don't care what anybody says, Putin recently knocked off his biggest opponent politically in a drive-by shooting, and then the guys that were arrested for it...
What?
Right.
What?
Right.
What is there? Nothing is here.
And then the guys that are arrested for it
on my horse.
Were former agents of like the Kazakhstan government and all this other stuff. Like it was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, they were like there may have been some talk about Nazi spies that were like 90 years old left. Remember that in World War II? Like Allied officers would get knocked off, and they would say it was the Germans have spies.
Yeah, they spies everywhere.
Right,
but this is very, very typical behavior of a guy who's trying to seize total control of his country.
And what's interesting is Ash Carter. On one hand, when he gave this, when he was talking, he said, "Look, no one wants another Cold War with Moscow or a hot conflict." However, he did say this. He talked about the progress that has been made in Europe since the demise of the Soviet Union. But he also said Russia must not be allowed to turn back the clock. This is an official within the United States executive administration now saying Russia must not be allowed to turn back the clock. And he's saying that in a statement in conjunction with to me that he also said this, quote, "We do not seek to make Russia an enemy, but make no mistake, we will defend our allies. The rules-based international establish a Soviet-era sphere of influence." So here you have acknowledgement from Ash Carter that the Soviet Union or Russia seeks to reestablish a Soviet-era, quote, Soviet-era sphere of influence, and is heating this up, which we have talked about on this show.
3 years now.
We have been talking about this. And you now have a member of this administration, of all people,
right,
that seem to be acknowledging this.
Well, and not only did he come out and say that, which if he just said those words without the bolstering of forces in Eastern Europe, if he just said those words, okay, well maybe he's just blowing. He may be just blowing smoke. But the reality that we're supporting all these troops behind that and all this equipment, and we're starting exercises, increased exercises with local governments and military. And I have an extended family member who's over in Europe right now that's involved in the training in a lot of these countries, Estonia, Lithuania, all these other things. Activity that hasn't really happened in that region since the Cold War. And then you have Vladimir Putin, who was a former Soviet KGB operative and leader.
And why is he trying to modernize his military so much right now?
Well, that was his big push the last 3 years, right? He's been saying that time and again, modernization of the military, expansion of their military, increasing by and large the amount of money that their country pushes into the military, opening deals with Iran and China and all these other countries that use the exact
had more than 40 new ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, that are capable of getting through any missile defense system.
Well, that's
hang
cute.
on a second. No, it's cute.
But it's possible.
But you know what? Let's take him at his word.
Why should we not?
Right? If somebody says, hey, listen, I have this gun, and I'm going to get this gun, and I'm going to shoot around at you.
Breaking news here on the Sackheads. No, on the in the Ukraine. We're from Far East Russia, very Asian appearing individuals. And what they did is they break down all this social media. Hey, this guy took a picture here. What building's behind him? You have this Ukrainian building because you have this image that's very specific. You have a street sign. Well, now you look at this other guy. This guy's further social media, Facebook or whatever. Oh, well, here he is in a Russian uniform 6 months earlier at this Russian base, and here's the image of how we know why. And so, and they went as far as to contact, they found one of the individuals' house, and he's a Russian soldier fighting in the Ukraine. So one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is, by and large, we as a world at this point, nobody wants to come out as a government and say, Russia invaded Ukraine. And to me, that's just such a pussy move. This guy's ratcheting up like crazy.
Well, can't use this segment either.
Meow, cat. It's like a little scared cat, like a little watery scared cat.
What? Yeah, like a soggy little.
You have this guy who's talking about ratcheting up his military, expanding his military even more, adding ICBMs. We know they invaded Georgia. He pretty much invaded Georgia.
Not our Georgia, although this administration wouldn't have done anything.
Well, without the stars and bars.
Right.
He invaded Georgia. He was involved in it. And then the Ukraine. Nobody wants to come out and call that what it is. It was the invasion from Russia into the sovereign nation of Ukraine.
Yes. Why can't we ban why doesn't the United Nations ban the Russian flag of the former Soviet Union?
I don't know.
The sickle and hammer.
I don't know.
Right.
It gets used all over the place.
Right.
But that still happens.
That's not a symbol of oppression.
No, God, no. Are you kidding me? It's for the working class people.
Right.
For the workers.
Right. The sickle for the agriculture and the hammer for the industrial workers.
Right. That's exactly what it's for.
I think it was
those piles ain't going to drive themselves.
Right.
That weed ain't going to cut itself. Right. You know, but you flash forward. So the whole world knows Russia invaded. Nobody wants to call them on it, despite this overwhelming evidence. But now you flash forward.
Overwhelming evidence. The military folks there with weapons.
Right. That have been proven to be actual active Russian military.
That was one big attempted Jedi mind trick.
Yes, I know it was.
These are not the soldiers you are thinking of.
But
these are not the soldiers we were
thinking of. But now you flash forward and you had all these incursions. You had the Russia sub, I think it was in the Swedish, in one of the Swedish harbors a couple months ago. You've had all these aircraft incursions, unsafe, very unsafe and provocative aircraft interceptions. over international airspace and waters. You recently ships that were tracking one of our ships in international waters. The Canadian Prime Minister went to visit one of his ships in the Northern Atlantic, and they were being closely trailed by 2 Russian ships. So, and they knew what it was. So they are ratcheting up. They have invaded the Ukraine as much as they don't want to say it. They took it because they wanted that hot water port, that warm water port, to be able to launch ships in winter if need be. So they took Crimea. And now you have Ash Carter coming out and saying this. And as we said, a president that wouldn't even throw a tomahawk at Syria because he wussed out at the last minute.
Really? Why do you have the Native American reference? What is it with you, Sean? We can't go 1 week.
Help myself. I just can't help myself.
So well tonight.
The classes were doing so good.
1 week without some kind of racist
My
reference.
therapist said I was doing just fine.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Not.
I just flash when I get in here, I guess.
I guess.
And you look at what's going on with Iran, all the... You look at what an anti-conflict this president is. And
I thought you were going to say anti-communist, and I was about to stand up and slap you on top of the head.
way and not be able to stop it.
I don't think that's it. I think
I think there's a litany of things, but I think that's on top of it. Is any war? If he gets in a war and loses, he'll always be the president that lost that war A. But if he never gets involved in one, he never lost one. You know what I mean? I kind of think that's his mentality. On top of a bunch of other crap, I think that falls in there somewhere. So all this, and then all of a sudden, Ash Carter pops up, and I actually don't dislike Ash Carter. Some of the things that I've read about with him in the past, some of the things that he said, I actually agree with. I don't know if he's as
don't want them reestablishing Soviet-era influence, which is basically what Putin's doing. And nobody from the administration came out and said, well, that's not really what we meant.
And the fact that it wasn't John Kerry giving that speech in a very John Kerry kind of back-down, sidestep sort of way.
Right.
Normally the Secretary of State does some of that stuff. You know, you throw out there, I mean, that's where What's-Her-Face was, the one who's running for office now.
Who, Hillary?
Secretary of State What's-Her-Face. You know, with the reset button and all about Russian policy. And now, instead of the Secretary of State to try to mend the bridges, you have the Secretary of Defense, the guy who's in charge of the military, if you will.
No, that'd be the president.
Well,
I know
sorry.
I know. I'm just being a smartass.
Okay.
Yeah, you have SecDef, who's kind of an authority on this.
Right. It's a big deal. And he's coming out and very, very specific wording.
And he's
saying
this at a speech in Berlin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right across the road, literally, from the old Soviet Union. So it's scary to me in the sense that we know the trickle-down information that we get. We know that Russia has amassed a ton of troops on the other side of the Ukraine. We know that there's been little pokes in Estonia in that area, and they've kind of towed the line up there. I think the major concern, and you know what, maybe this is why we don't have a plan for ISIS yet, as they've been so focused on Russia. But, I'm kidding, of course. But I think the fact that there is enough concern there that we're taking such an active role in that region with our military and our rhetoric, if you will, says to me that there's more coming than we know. And you say Cold War. I don't think Putin's a Cold War type of guy. I really don't. I think Putin's an all-out, let's see who wins. I'm in the KGB. You have a gun, I have a gun. I need to kill you, you need to kill me. Let's go up behind the building and see who wins. He has that mentality. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a lot of his intel and security guys, they have that mentality as well. So you're looking at a very volatile country. Yeah, they may not have the equipment like they used to have, but they do have some decent equipment. They have really good anti-air missiles.
Do you remember when we were growing up?
Which is one of our biggest assets when we go into a war is our air.
When we were growing up, we had East and West Germany, correct?
Yes.
And Bonn, I believe, was the capital of the western portion of Germany, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Berlin was on the Soviet side, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so isn't it significant or
that
symbolic
he's in Berlin?
That he's in Berlin.
Giving that speech?
Giving this speech?
Absolutely is. Absolutely is.
I haven't seen that talked about. But I think the fact that he is in Berlin giving this speech is also significant and sends a message.
The only way it would have been more
to
significant.
Vlad the Putt-Putt.
The only way his location would have been more significant
is if he did it in Moscow.
Moscow. Right, exactly. If he just stood in Moscow and he was like, hey, guess what? I just put my middle finger up. People at home can't see that. But
and it was a very 1960s sci-fi kind of sound you just made. I had like a vision of a UFO floating.
Right. SR-71.
Yeah. A what?
What? Sacco? Oh, okay, good. Thanks, Sacco. Sacco had my back on that one. It's starting to get that real. The only problem is we don't have a Reagan to end it. Yet. And, it tells you why, if this staves off or holds off to after 2016, the election of that president in 2016 is going to be huge.
I think this should be a question asked for 2016 candidates.
Exactly.
About this whole situation. Now, you mentioned Reagan, and I wanted to... Really?
Call me Tubby.
Please go ahead.
No, I was just building it up for you. No,
you didn't.
Nobody knows.
I was building it up.
Nobody knows what the statue was.
We're talking about Reagan, for Christ's sake.
I was. You weren't.
Oh my
God!
And
we're not going to get to it.
At the state capitol in California. Don't do that.
You show him some respect, son.
You show some respect, Sacco.
Punch, hit him.
A new statue of Ronald Reagan was unveiled in the historic side of the California state capitol. So I give the California legislature props for approving that.
Huge.
And for putting a statue of Ronald Reagan, former governor of California, former Democrat, turned Republican, huge conservative, obviously, in the California state capitol. So good job, California legislature, for approving that, and for the California government for putting that in.
Yeah, for everything else you dick up, you got one right. So good job on that.
Right.
That's your one for the year.
Wouldn't clean the statue of Christopher Columbus and the Queen after the truck crashed into the Capitol because you thought it was racist. But whatever.
Yeah, well.
Good job on the Reagan.
Yeah. We're up against a break. When we come back,
Sean has a topic for you.
We're going to wrap up the show almost immediately upon return. No, we got more for you here on the Sackheads Radio Show live on the SHR Media Network. You closed the door 4 times, Sacco. How can you not have music right now?
You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf for the stupid promo.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border and says coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And welcome back to the Sackheads Radio Show, live on the SHR Media Network. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
This night's kind of gone by fast, hasn't it?
It has. It's only 8:30, right? I don't.
What was that for?
Was that Hillary with all the scandals?
What's the giggle at the end of that? It does get a little bit weird here at the end of the night, doesn't it? You know, I think it's funny. So everything we were talking about with Russia earlier, and the Huffington Post wrote an article, and this guy's name is David Alawala Ding Dong.
Bing Bang.
Bing Bang. Oh, either way. And he's citing what you talked about earlier with Putin adding the ICBMs. But one of the things, he titled it as the U.S. needs to think twice about antagonizing Russia. And I want to turn this into kind of the media thing and go back to how the media reports certain things. How are we antagonizing Russia by defending our allies when Russia's the one who is, and he goes into the Bay of Pigs thing and the whole 9 yards, but Russia's the one recognize Russia. If that isn't the left very Cronkite Vietnam approach to reality, I don't know what is. And again, you know, we talked about the reaction with the media and everything that happened in Charleston and the horrific shooting, and then you had Don Lemon with the sign with the N-word on it and all this other things that are coming out. It kind of scares me. And when you talk about war in this country, and war is one of those things that nobody ever wants to go to war, and I don't care what the left wants to say about the right and conservatives. Nobody wants to go to war, but sometimes
it's necessary.
It's a necessary evil, whether we want it to be or not. And I think back to President Reagan's speech when he's talking about, you know, fighting communism or just bowing down and giving in. But reality is what it is. Sometimes you have to take up arms against an oppressive force or an invading nation or something like that, even for our allies. And what the media is really starting to get out ahead of with Russia, because they've ignored Russia. But now all of a sudden, Russia's on the doorstep, and the media, CNN, Huffington Post, it's time to start jumping on Russia again. But they're going to push the narrative they want to push versus reporting facts. And they're going to start the narrative of, well, we can't antagonize Russia, and we have to watch what we're doing, but a very anti-war. And those of us who recognize there are times that you cannot back away.
Sometimes you have to fight.
Whether you want to or not.
If a bully punches you in the face, you have to fight. If a bully repeatedly takes your lunch money, at some point, you have to fight.
Yeah.
And by bully taking lunch money, I mean the UN.
Well, and it's we kind of talked about it with Palestine and Israel. If
somebody points a gun at you,
you have to fight. Right. And one of the things that we talked about, and I'm going to play a clip really quick from President Reagan here in a minute, but one of the things that we talked about with with Israel and Palestine is how long would you let your neighbor throw rocks at your house before you did something about it? 702 rocks hitting your family members in the head. Fortunately, you're able to stop it, but what if
these are rockets?
Right.
So what if your neighbor was shooting bullets through your house?
Exactly. So every time we get to a point like this where something may happen and you have that whole, you're just warmongers or anything, listen to President Reagan in this speech. This is one of my favorite part of one of my favorite speeches that he ever did, but I think it's really germane here.
Like Jackson?
Tito. Sacco, do I have volume or what? Thank you.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us, and this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better red than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard around the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price they will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. He said there's something children risk the last best hope of man on earth, or will sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
I remember when that speech was given, and I remember the music that was playing in the background. Oh, never mind.
One of the greatest speeches that he's ever given, in my opinion. Certainly that portion is an absolutely amazing speech. But he very much was looking at the same challenge that we're not far off at looking at today. In a way, you could argue that with ISIS, we're up against the same type of challenge, right? We don't want to do anything, but at some point, our hand is kind of tipped. Do we sit back and just accept what's coming, or do we take that proactive step to get out ahead of it? The same thing kind of happened now with Russia, and you have a very liberal media who's already starting to put up the defense, right? Who's already starting to, well, let's not provoke Russia, blah, 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 blah. But you see the
same... They don't need any provocation.
Right. You see the same thing with
Russia
Iran.
Needs no provocation, nor does Iran.
Right.
Nor does ISIS.
Right. And yet we still have media that's compliant. We still have people in this country that are compliant. And just, well, you know, they're just talking a lot. They're just talking a lot.
No, they're not. They're acting.
Right. The difference with Russia, Iran, and ISIS have some means to hurt us. Russia has some serious means to hurt our allies locally and us overseas, more so than any other nation.
Us here at home.
Right. That's what I mean, overseas from them. More than any other nation. And it's something that we need to accept as a reality. And there's a reason we were locked in. And prepare for.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason we were locked into a Cold War with them for 50 some odd years.
And look, Reagan was directly responsible for the collapse of the Soviet Union. And we need similar policies. Ignored, and it can't be. And not only important from the perspective of global affairs, but also important from the perspective of our national character.
Yes. Yeah. Will we? And listen, this president's allowed a lot of things to happen that he shouldn't be proud of. Does he want to be the president that allows the Cold War to happen again, or even worse, does he want to be the president who stood by and did nothing while Russia advanced throughout Europe again?
And that's why I think Ash Carter's speech and the announcement of the contributions to the defense of Europe is so significant, is because if it's at a point that even this administration can't ignore any longer. They can't bury their heads in the sand and hope it'll go away, or push it off, or think that talks alone are going to work with Putin.
No, and listen, Putin will never talk to us again rationally. He may throw some words out here and there.
Does he talk rationally ever?
No, but he will never sit down with us again at the table. He will never have...
He might, but it won't.
It won't be for real. He'll make it look good. Putin's job right now, and if you listen to some of his speeches and some of the wires and stuff that are internal, right now he is trying to get as many people in that country as they can, and he's already been very successful at this, as becoming compliant to the government and completely complicit with the government, whatever the government want. He is turning us into the great devil once again that we were years ago in Russia. You listen to his words and
he's
his
using
speeches.
that national pride, which somebody else used very effectively.
National pride.
Who was it?
He was a fast